Good evening. So, I'm very pleased to be with you tonight, uh, particularly moderating this special roundtable dialogue. And from Dr. Dino, Patti, speech, I capture three keywords. First, integration. Second, centrality. And third, people to people connection. And this last here is important because it's the format of our dialogue tonight is about people to people connection. Without that team, that network, that nexus, nothing would happen. So we all know, but allow me to just refresh and define in a short words what is ASEAN economic integration, just so that we're on the same phase. It boosts trade and investment within ASEAN, and it opens up economic opportunities. It drives economic growth and development of the region, and it enhances connectivity and infrastructure for smoother trade and investment flows. That's the trade part of the integration. And also ASEAN centrality. This is also a fundamental keywords. Easy to say, not easy to practice. And I thank Dr. Dino who had brought in the issue of geopolitical tension in the world and in the region. And we all know from our practice that when it comes to security, it depends on what type of security are we addressing. Non-traditional security, most of the time we agree. Addressing climate change, illegal immigration, pandemics, and then we face the same challenges, so we tend to agree, at least to accept that this is a common threat. But when it comes to traditional security, that's another matter. Myself, I have been a senior diplomat at the International Atomic Energy Agency. We know what are the threats of a nuclear security and this proliferation of nuclear weapons. I left the IEA 9 years ago. I thought that the world entering the 21st century that we've become wiser, but actually this nuclear threat is coming back even worse than before. So that's the importance of centrality. How would ASEAN challenge that? We will come with the questions. And overall, ASEAN economic integration promotes competitiveness and market access. That's very important. The centrality is to ensure peace, stability, and regional influence. With ASEAN, with the size of our population, the power of economic growth the last decade before the pandemic, I think the ASEAN voice is to be listened. And both economic integration and centrality contribute to the prosperity and collective strength of Southeast Asian nations and beyond. So I'd like to welcome my distinguished panelists. Luckily, I'm not a specialist in what we're talking about, so I will have no bias in moderating. So maybe we should start with Miss Dina Kurniasari. Welcome to the platform, who is the Director of ASEAN Negotiations Ministry of Trade of the Republic of Indonesia. Dr. Dino, Patti, need no introduction. And Datuk Serimot Iqbal Rotha. Welcome to the panel. So for me it was easy because the theme, the organization committee has actually identified three main questions. So let's do this. I think I will give a voice to each of you to talk about this integration and particularly why ASEAN integration and ASEAN centrality matters. That's important. So let's start with the lady. Yeah, please.
Good evening, distinguished participants, Honorable Tan Sri Michael Yo, the Chairman of the ASEAN Leadership and Partnership Forum, and also the Honorable Pak Dino, Pak. It's very honor for me to share the same stage with you, Pak. And also Bapak Moderator Dr. Cem Kit Reti and also Datuk Sri Muhammad Iqbal Rator. All distinguished participants once again. It is my pleasure to be part of these important events to discuss the importance of the ASEANs, particularly during Indonesian chairmanships. And regarding the questions raised by Pak Moderator, Pak Dr. Cem Kitreti, what actually the importance of the ASEAN centrality and integrations, ya Pak. I believe this is one of the most important things that should be addressed during Indonesian chairmanship, and that's why during Indonesian chairmanship, we do have 7 PED, Priority Economic Deliverables, under 3 strategic thrusts. The first one will be the recovery and rebuilding. We have 4 main PED related with the integrity of the ASEANs. The first one regarding the ASEAN Services Facilitation Frameworks, and the second one regarding the signing of the second protocol of ASEAN Australia New Zealand FTA, to upgrading the commitment with us under ANZ FTAs, because currently we already have the commitment with Australia and New Zealand, and during our Indonesian chairmanship, we would like to signing the second protocol with Australia and also New Zealand. And the third one will be the establishment of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, RCEP, as we are the initiator, and also we are the chair of the RCEP negotiations. And the current goal for us right now is to establish the RCEP support unit, which will be part of the ASEAN Secretariat, This is the interim arrangements, because the final goal for us will be to create the RCEP, Jakarta as the RCEP capital. But for our current PED right now is to only establish the RCEP support unit in the ASEAN Secretariat. And then the other PED that we would like to raise during our chairmanship will be the creating the ASEAN Industrial Project-Based Initiative. In this regard, we would like to enhance the regional supply chains, and then to create one community, one economy, and then hopefully we can also fulfill our necessity, our own need, and so on and so forth among us. So we can increase once again the supply chain and productivity, and also invite the participation of the private sectors. And the other pillar or the strategic thrust or the other cluster will be the digital economy. We believe based on our reviews and also our negotiations, one of the main necessity for us is increasing the digital economy. But the problem will be we don't have any digital economy agreement, not yet. We don't have any digital economy. We do have ASEAN agreement on e-commerce, but we don't have digital economy agreement among ASEANs. That's why during Indonesia chairmanship, we would like to establish, we call it the launching of the negotiation of DEFA within this year, and hopefully the launching can be undertaken in September during the ASEAN Economic Community Council, IC Councils. And then we also have a target that there will be a common declarations among the leaders regarding the establishment of DEFA. And the end goal of this initiative will be creating the digital economy community among ASEANs. And the other thing will be the full implementation of e-Form-D through the ASEAN single window. I believe that since this forum attended by many private sectors, all of you maybe already noticed that we already have a ASEAN Trade in Good agreements. We already implement the ATIGA more than 10 years. But we just only have the conventional Form-D. And hopefully if we create or the mandatory implementation of e-Form-D through the electronic one, it will be more effective, more efficient. It will create another business-friendly environment for the private sectors in ASEAN, and hopefully it can increase the internal trade among us. Since based on our data, the using of the FOMD is not too good actually. It's only 60% less than 70%. So we still have many room to increase our use of FOMD. And then we do have another PED under the other cluster. We call it Strategic Trust 3, related with the sustainability. And we have one particular PED under this cluster that will be the roadmap of ASEAN harmonized standard to support sustainable development goals, or SDGs. So under this PED, we highly expect that there will be a value added product for our goods. So there will be another increasing for market access, not only under ASEAN regions, but also in our dialogue partners. So all those 7 PED under these 3 clusters already adopted by ministers, the economic ministers in the IM retreat in March. And then in ASEAN summit just that already conducted, the leaders also already accept and welcome all these PED. And all those PED, once again, it will enhance ASEAN integrations and also strengthens the ASEAN centrality. Thank you. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you, Dr. Dina, for all these important points regarding the centrality and integration ASEAN. Now, let's pass the floor to Dr. Kurniasari. What is your take on integration and centrality of ASEAN?
Thank you very much. Excuse me. Let me take a sip of water. Thank you, moderator, Excellency Dr. Cham. Actually, I'm very privileged to be in this panel to discuss some aspects of ASEAN for the benefit of this ASEAN Leadership and Partnership Forum. First, I want to pay my respects to the President of the Organizing Committee, Tan Sri Majid Khan, and to the Chief Executive, Tan Sri Michael Yeo, and of course to my, on the right, sitting here, Dino, Patti, Djalal, who has been able to give the welcome address. I'm privileged because on the one hand, I have Dino, or Dina. On the other hand, we have Dino. So between Dina and Dino, there is the Iqbal here. And I'm actually standing in for Dr. Sok Siphana, who is slotted to participate in this round table. But as he is arriving after the ASEAN Leaders Summit, he is still on the way, and I was giving a little prayer. I hope he arrives before I'm called to speak, so I can give my position to him. So with that little two aspects that I want to touch on, I think others have touched in some ways. So I'm looking at how best I would be able to add a little bit of value to the discussions. Now, when we talk about ASEAN centrality, first to my mind, what comes is, where geographically is ASEAN? On the one hand, on the right, depending on which side of the map you look at, you have got a great country like China. And then if you look on the left side, that is another great country called India. In between China and India lies, with borders to both the ASEAN, the 10 countries of ASEAN, more on the sea than on the land, linking these two. So we are definitely central to these two great civilizations, which have ruled this part of the world and many parts of the world, compared to what the impact in the West has brought about. So that centrality is key to our presence, and see how best we would be able to look forward in order to preserve what we have and also to enjoy what the future holds for us in terms of the global opportunities. We are addressing that. The next aspect of centrality is that you look at what is going on in the world. Tan Sri Michael earlier mentioned about the geopolitical tensions and also about the climate change tensions. The planet, I would say, is in peril. We are not able to address this rationally and on a logical mind. Is ASEAN doing that? You will find the ASEAN leaders are meeting together and addressing an aspect of consensus within the ASEAN, which is good for the region and for the people of the region. Whereas the rest of the world is looking at opportunities to kill this person, to destroy that nation, and also to exercise some supremacy. And he said, you're on my side or you're on the other side. Fortunately, ASEAN is not caught in this sort of tug of war. And when we started, we had the neutrality of what we call ZOPAN, the zone of peace and neutrality. That was central to ASEAN. But that ZOPAN was developed for the countries within the ASEAN. Let us not confront one another. Let us join hands and see how best we would be able to move forward in our own country so that our focus is not on confrontation and conflict, but on progress and prosperity. Now that, I believe, is central to the whole theme of progressing. And I hope our leaders continue to assert this aspect of our understanding. And that brings us to the next point, the people. Now, what are the people expecting in this part of the world within the ASEAN? They want peace and prosperity. How can we do that? How can we achieve that? Only by collective effort, cohesiveness, and without colluding, we will be able to forge. And Tan Sri Michael was earlier, and Dino was also talking about this competitive element. It's something like a family. Among siblings, there's always a competitive element. Somebody is better than somebody else. But as a family, you find that collectivity comes for the family's interest. So it is ASEAN's interest that we have to. Central to that is the people. Now, when I talk about the people, you'll find that ASEAN is not homogeneous in any way. The people are different. Racially, they are aligned to one DNA type or to another DNA type. And of course, humanity, we understand from evolutionary point of view or religious point of view, humanity is one. And therefore, we base our understanding on that, but much more than that. For example, the religions within the ASEAN, you have Islam, or even before Islam, Buddhism came, and you will find that Buddhism is all over ASEAN. And then Christianity came thereafter, or Hinduism came thereafter. Hinduism is also all over in the ASEAN. In some place, a little bit dominant. I should stop here and ask Siphana to come over and continue the talk. I'm taking, you are coming over to take the seat? Yeah.
Yeah,
Great. Come and take my seat. Take your seat.
so
No.
let's welcome my good friend Dr. Siphana, yeah, who is the
Oh my God.
yeah, who is the chairman.
Pull another chair.
Yeah.
So you can. Yes, somebody got a chair. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So Siphana, my good friend, he's all over the place, and most of the time I'm a victim of his being everywhere. Today, another example. He's the chairman of the Asian Vision Institute and senior advisor to the Royal Government of Cambodia. So now that you're here, Siphana, I'm gonna let him breathe a bit. Let him breathe. Dr. Dino,
Please.
I pass it to you.
Let
My
you-
God.
Yeah. In your introduction, you mentioned already about the importance of ASEAN integration centrality, and we have talked so much already. Unless you have something to add, I would like to ask that, considering the national and regional pressure point that we have discussed here, how would you see as opportunity and challenge for ASEAN to address those regional and global issues?
Thank you very much. I'm going to answer this with a direct policy suggestion for the government, because the government is sitting right next to us, Ibu Dina, right? Look, we know intra-ASEAN trade has been stagnating at around 20-25%, and we're looking for ways to jump it, I don't know, to 50% or whatever, but that's going to be a very difficult task. So we have to ask, why is it hard for ASEAN, intra-ASEAN trade to jump from its current number? FPCI had done some work on looking at which Indonesian provinces actually trade with ASEAN. Yeah, we have about 36 provinces in Indonesia, right? And you know, only about 12 trade significantly across the border with an ASEAN economy, right? And actually there are provinces who don't trade at all with the neighboring economy, which is right across the eye, right? That's kind of strange, right? Yeah. So that's the problem, right? And if you ask me how can that happen, I'll go back to my earlier point, which is the people have heard about ASEAN, right? The governments deal a lot. There are about 900 ASEAN meetings at the government level. But if you ask the people, the stakeholders at the grassroots, how is ASEAN relevant to you? And what things are you doing in connection with ASEAN? You get very little answer, right? One example about how people don't know about ASEAN. In Jakarta now, you see a lot of ASEAN epicentrum signs all over the place, right? But before this, there's no sign at all about ASEAN. No billboards, right? Nothing that says ASEAN belongs to Indonesia, Indonesia belongs to ASEAN, or no billboard that says ASEAN, a 600 million opportunity for Indonesia. Nothing informs the public in public space, not in bus stations, not in airports, not in railroads, about what ASEAN is. And this explains why the public doesn't know about ASEAN. If you don't know about ASEAN, then you are blind about the opportunities. So my suggestion is very simple. ASEAN, and this can be led by ASEAN Secretariat, must have a plan, a public socialization plan, right? Put ASEAN on the billboards, right? If you go to Singapore or Manila, if you land anywhere, if you travel anywhere throughout ASEAN, there must be something that reminds the population about ASEAN and frames the population what ASEAN means to them and how ASEAN can be beneficial to their lives, right? Local business has to be trained about market intelligence. Look, my kids want to study in Singapore at NUS. Sorry, not NUS. Yeah, NUS. Why? Because they know about NUS. Their friends go there. They hear about it, right? But the businesses, if they don't know about the market conditions in ASEAN economies, they're not going to trade there. They're not going to be interested. So there must be a plan, a program, which is not just 1 year, but it has to be sustainable with resources and with a strategy to make businesses, students, the public, all the stakeholders in society understand what ASEAN is, what ASEAN economy, what ASEAN economic community is, and how to get the best out of them. Because right now you see the most active in ASEAN is Singaporeans and Malaysians and the Thais, right? Vietnam also becoming very active, right? But that's not all of ASEAN. It's not even, right? And I would love to see that situation whereby all the stakeholders at the grassroots really get what ASEAN is and how they can extract the benefits from ASEAN. But just one more point on the centrality side, yeah. So I take your point about ASEAN centrality, and I think the key thing we have to understand is for ASEAN centrality to be robust, we have to be close to all the major powers. Now, this is important. Why? Because right now, the major powers are having competition and rivalries, and they're trying to pull us in different directions. I remember U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. He came to Indonesia and he says, "Stay away from China. Get away from China. That's the bad guy," and was ranting about the Chinese Communist Party and so on and so on, right? And I'm glad nobody listened in Indonesia because China may be the American adversary, but it doesn't mean we have to make that our adversary, right? And for us to play a centrality role effectively, it's not that we have to be a distance from everybody. We have to be close to Russia. Sorry, we have to be close to Washington. We have to be close to Beijing. We have to be close to Tokyo, to New Delhi, right? Be close to the major powers so we can play a role. But if we start leaning to one side, then our ability to play a centrality role is diminished. And the second thing, and this is very important, our centrality is effective to the extent that we can come up with initiatives, right? It's not enough that we say to America, Russia, Japan, China, hey, meet in an ASEAN summit every year. Meet at the East Asia Summit. Meet at the RCEP. It's not enough, right? Meeting place is important as a point of centrality, but without ASEAN having initiatives on their own and leaving those initiatives to outside powers, we will lose that centrality position. I mean, one example is East Asia Summit, right? It's one of the premier forums for dialogue in the region, in the Indo-Pacific. How did it happen? Because it was an ASEAN initiative. It's not a Chinese initiative, not an American or Indian initiative, but it was Indonesian. It was an ASEAN initiative. And the RCEP, right, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, it's not a Chinese initiative. It's not India is not in it. Yeah? It's not a Japanese one. It is an ASEAN initiative, right? So as long as we can understand that ASEAN must always have the capacity to come up with fresh initiatives, then we will be central to events. But if we start losing that edge, then it's going to be the Quad that's going to take the win. It's going to be others that's going to take the win away from ASEAN.
Thank you, Dr. Dino, for bringing this geopolitical dimension to our discussion tonight. And also, as a historian, I like when I teach international relations to my undergrad, to tell them that international relation diplomacy are the result of history. And regarding China, if you look at the archaeological findings on the continent, and particularly maritime archaeology, this part of the world has been in contact with China for 2,000 years, long before other power came in. So that's important to maintain also that traditional and the two millennials of relationship. But that what I like from what you said, Dr. Dino, is that whatever we say as a vision, as a road forward, we need a mechanism, something practical to implement that. And now I thank Dr. Siphana who come on time. Yeah, we can say that he's not late, he has been delayed. That's a bit different. So there's nobody that know this concept better in terms of future mechanism, the legal implication. He told me he just finished a book on that. And how would ASEAN as a promoter, essential in the negotiation, successful negotiation to get, now the baby is here, how can ASEAN contribute to the implementation, compliance to the rule, regional cooperation, capacity building, and particularly looking at a dimension that go larger than ASEAN? How can this new trade agreement contribute to both and reconcile two ends that are sometimes difficult to connect? Is on one side economic growth, and the other side protect the environment and looking at solution to address the consequences of what people call now the climate change and the Anthropocene. I like this term as a scientist. Anthropocene, you try to imagine a globe, a world with a trace of a boots from human on that. First time ever in the history of humanity, of humankind actually. More than that, we have changed our geological environment that we cannot ignore anymore. Economic growth seems so small to that. So how to reconcile that, the immediate economic growth to meet the needs of our population, and also making sure that we preserve the environment that is livable for our future generation. Dr. Siphana?
Well, thank you. I'm sorry, I was just rushing. The plane leaving Labuan Bajo was supposed to leave at 3, but it was delayed because we have to wait for a few liter private plane to take off. So we just sit there and wait, and I must say that the coffee in Labuan Bajo tastes great. Tastes much better than Starbucks coffee. And I was told that the coffee in that part is great. So we have to buy a few bags to take home. So, just fresh off from the ASEAN Summit, and I was very pleased that we have a very successful summit this morning, wrap up with the retreat. But all in all, it's I'm very pleased to see it's so smooth. It's so smooth. And for this year, we have Indonesia have a special, ASEAN have a special guest. I think we all know who is a special guest. Timor-Leste there, omnipresent. We happen to be in the same hotel. So again, it is quite a refreshing view to see. Very soon, we will have the 11th member of ASEAN. So we have to change the logo. We have to add another, flag there. Hopefully, by the next summit, maybe the leader will make the announcement. But Timor-Leste has its own roadmap to deliver, and if they can speed up and deliver this on this roadmap, I think our leader will be very pleased to welcome them. But I think it's just a matter of time, right? It's a timing issue. It's not going to be forever. So, during Cambodia Chairmanship last year, we have paved the way to allow Timor-Leste to be admitted as a full member, subject to this compliance of this various fact-finding mission. So that is one element of centrality that I think will strengthen us. And the thing about ASEAN is that we're not big enough, but we're not small enough. So adding Timor-Leste will increase our heft. So we're slightly more chubby, you know. So this is a good sign on that. And bear in mind that Timor-Leste does bring to the table, you know, a new set of resource of oil, gas, everything that will make our region more attractive to foreign investor. But the other thing I want to share with you, what has been preoccupied us excitingly the last 2 weeks is not the ASEAN Summit for sure, but it's the SEA Games. I don't know you follow the soccer, the football and everything, but it's quite an exciting event because particularly I'm coming from Cambodia, so we have not had the opportunity because of the war for 60 some years. These are our first time ever that we're hosting. And I do recall about 10 years ago when we have SEA Games, and then we have some colleague who say, Cambodia, medalless. And then another friend say, Cambodia, still medalless. Because, you know, we just emerged from the war, we just entered ASEAN, we're still struggling. But now we have over 100 medals. Of course, we moved to number 3, you know, because, from number 1. But, you know, we're number 1 for 10 days, so I'm happy. We're number 1 10 days, right? So now we move number 2, you know, Thailand's catching up. It's an exciting game. And to me, it goes back to what Dr. Dino said, that, you know, these are the sort of people-to-people connectivity that raise the profile of ASEAN. These are amazing. And sometimes, I mean, yes, Dr. Dino, you mentioned we got to put the banner, thing. But, you know, nothing beats the human excitement. Nothing beats the media exposure. Nothing beats all this profiling, right? And to me, I'm always a bit critical of media because media love to cover summit. And I bump to all the media friends in Labuan Bajo. But I say, come on, guys, you got to take time to cover smaller events. Not everything is all about summit, about leader, about foreign minister meeting. And I take, for example, you know, I can fly to Indonesia and you can fly to Cambodia with no visa. We'll fly to Bangkok day in, day out. No visa. But you think this no visa thing can happen just like that? No. It probably take a colleague from Department of Immigration, the Ministry of, Border Control, whatever. It probably take them years before they can come up with a consensus that, look, for all 10 ASEAN countries, we can fly without visa. And certainly, access to the 10 ASEAN countries become available to everybody. And with the cheaper air, transport, certainly ASEAN is accessible. Although I must admit that it takes me 24 hours to come from Cambodia to Labuan Bajo. So connectivity is still an issue here. And so we have to stay one night in Singapore, transit to Bali, and then to Labuan Bajo. So I suggest Garuda will have a direct flight later on. But anyway, these are my first 2 introduction into the issue. But let me go to answer, yes, what Dr. Cham mentioned about the centrality issue, which is about ASEP. I just sent to the printer my book on ASEP, geopolitical analysis and geoeconomic analysis, and a big section on the legal analysis of the agreement. I think this ASEP will be the game changer for. Okay, so we will conclude in 5 minutes. Yes. So ASEP will be a game changer for the region for at least the next 10 years. Okay, and here I'm just talking about ASEP. I'm not talking about the CPTPP. Let's just focus on something ASEAN-driven initiative. Yes. So this is one initiative that all ASEAN countries are the founder. As unlike the CPTPP, where not all of us are in there, right? So to me, the game-changing aspect of this ASEP is that the rule origin will transform the whole regional dynamics. Japan don't have to deal directly with China if they don't like. China may not be comfortable to deal with Japan directly, if that's the case. ASEAN can be their transit point, because with the rule origin, they can set up shop anywhere in ASEAN. And then from there onward, back to Japan, to China, to Korea, to Australia, New Zealand, whatever. So these are the game-changing aspect. And the thing that is exciting is that all ASEAN countries, we have access to our own natural resource, our own national endowment that can provide as a source to make up for this for 40%. Because 40% rule origin, if you have the raw material, you will meet easily the 40%. So here we can look, what does Indonesia has? I take, for example, my country, we have rubber plantation, right? We have like 700,000 hectares of rubber plantation, a source of latex that can make tie, that can make glove, medical glove, that can make all sort of auto part, rubber-based auto part. That automatically is a source of investment. What else? In the service sector, we can just invest in each other's country, and with ASEP, I think we can move up the intra-trade. Because for the last 10, 15 years, we never surpassed 20, 22, 23%. We struggle, we're happy. Some year we have 24%, but we're nowhere near the European Union where they are almost 50% already. You cannot have an intra-trade so low and still claim you have deep economic integration. ASEP will be that driving force. ASEP will bring us to a higher level in terms of intra-trade. And only when you have a stronger, high intra-trade that can we feel it's a true community. We keep saying ASEAN Economic Community. Yeah, but in the real sense, it's not really that. I take the case of my country. I look at my dear professor, Thailand. PTT is everywhere in Cambodia. Every highway, you have PTT. Cafe Amazon, everywhere. And you have some people, oh, but PTT is a Thai company. I say, no. I correct you. PTT may be a Thai company, but it's foremost an ASEAN Economic Community company. When you buy from PTT, unlike you buy from Total, you're buying from a fellow, ASEAN country. So it makes sense to support them. And look, if PTT can do this, why can a Cambodian, why can a Malaysian do the same thing? So we should have a much larger mindset than be obsessed. Oh, but it's a Thai, oh, it's Vietnam, oh, it's Malaysia. No. We are now in one ASEAN Economic Community. We should promote that. And ultimately, we all benefit. But anyway, I think these are some of my initial points, and tomorrow I will have another opportunity to be in a panel, and I probably will continue expanding on that. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Siphana. I have been told that we should close the panel in 2 minutes, but I think that Datuk Serimot has something to say briefly.
Not really. I think when Dino concluded his geopolitical understanding and how ASEAN should position, I used to watch this film called The Godfather. I think everybody has watched The Godfather. There is one caption that comes in. The Godfather tells his son, keep our friends close, but keep our enemies even closer. I think this is what ASEAN will have to do in order to ward off. Keep our ASEAN friends close, But whoever our enemies are, we don't want to name them, but keep them closer. And this is a good closing remark for this panel session.
Thank you. So thank you for bringing all those points. I think that we have opened the floor for discussion for the next 1 day and a half, more to come. But I cannot close before mentioning one point that we have not raised here, is that last year, during the Cambodia chairmanship in Cambodia, ASEAN has launched this initiative, ASEAN Green Deal. And this is important. So to sum up our discussion, we have to work together. There is no choice. Sort out all the differences, the centrality, look at something practical and policy-wise, and most of all, people to people. And last point, in just 30 seconds, when I came in last night at the airport, I ran into a part of the Indonesia SEA Games delegation. So I chat with them, and I found out that two female athletes, won the medal of Gun Bokotao, which is the traditional Cambodian boxing that did for 1,000 years. And when I went further with my question, they have been trained by a master from Cambodia. So you see, one master of ancient boxing Cambodia, Bokotao, was sent here to train our Indonesian athlete fellow. They went to Cambodia to the SEA Games in Phnom Penh, and they won the medals on that. And this is a wonderful example of people-to-people connectivity. So with this, let's give a round of applause to our panelists. And thank you for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, Dr. Chen.